with that said, though, we're going to make our move into postseason baseball because it is championship weekend, because all the championship games are starting this weekend, or rather are in the middle of happening. And we're going to start with the Frontier League like we all have done pretty much all year, because this past week in the Frontier League has lived up to the hype, starting with Game 2 of the divisional series against Ottawa and Quebec. Ottawa traveled to Quebec up 1-0 in the series. They needed one win to get the job done. It was a very, very close and hard-fought game, and honestly is a solid contender for Game of the Year. Ottawa took a lead early. Quebec snatched the lead from them, made it 2-1. Then the third, tied it up. Ottawa did. Then in the fourth, Quebec got the lead back. In the sixth, Ottawa takes it back, and then it's score-locked and deadlocked for quite some time. In the eighth inning, the lights go out because there's a power outage. Then luckily the lights came back on. The power was turned back on. Although I will say, if you look up some of the videos from Quebec and from, I believe, Carl Tardif, who won the Reporter of the Year for the Frontier League, you look up some of the videos they were tweeting out. It was very cool. They were singing and whatnot. They had like the phone lights, like candles in the stadium and whatnot. They were having a really fun time. It seemed like a fantastic atmosphere for a baseball game, to be honest with you. And then they get to the bottom of the ninth. Quebec has no outs, bases loaded. Matt Valen comes in and he strikes out the next three batters in order to retire the side, end the threat. 10th inning, each side gets a runner, but doesn't really do anything with it. We get to the 11th. At this point, the pitcher for the Miners that's been on the mound in Franklin Parra, he's thrown in 3 innings. He's going on to his 4th inning of work, and he's been lights out to this point. He would wind up pitching the 4 full innings, only walking 1 as the lone base runner that would get on base, and he struck a 5 in those 4 innings as well. But more to the point, the Capitals managed to get some more base runners on, and then TJ White winds up getting a base hit with, I believe, 2 outs in the bottom of the 11th to get the 4th and winning run across the plate for the Capitals, forcing a Game 3. So before we get on to Game 3 and then finish talking about that series as a whole, it was an exciting finish to Game 2, and that deserves its own conversation right now.
Yeah, I think that, I think it had to be Game of the Year, honestly, just with beyond baseball, with the lights going out and kind of setting all of that into motion. It was an awesome game, and that's what an elimination game between two rivals should be, honestly. And it was just seesaw back and forth. You get hats off to Franklin Parra, really, out of the Quebec bullpen, and without giving up a hit for 4 innings, finishing that all the way. And I think that, that's exactly what you would, with Pat Scalabrini running the show, that's Parra's game at that point, especially with how he was pitching. You're either going to win with him or you're going to lose with him. But yeah, just an unbelievable game, a true classic between both of these teams, and certainly to force a Game 3. You almost wish like a game like this could have been like Game 3, but just an unbelievable baseball game that will go down in the history books, especially if it ends up being a special season for one of these teams.
Absolutely there. I also just want to acknowledge Matt Valen had a fantastic performance as well. Both bullpens really, really showed up and balled out, really. You can't ask for a pitcher to come into a more high leverage situation of bases loaded, none away, tie game, bottom of the ninth. If you even walk a guy, even a deep fly ball or a passed ball will lose the game for your team. And you come in, you not just get 3 outs, but you get 3 strikeouts. That's some real ice in the veins type stuff there. But yeah, Franklin Parra, his performance is just as, if not even more impressive, that you only walk one person in probably the 4 most high leverage innings of your entire season. Because you come in after the lights come back on in the 8th, it's a tie game for 8, 9, 10, and for his part of the 11th. Knowing that even one slip up could end your season, that's some high leverage, that's some high stress situations there. And he just handled it so tremendously well that you just gotta tip your cap to him. I mean, that's just Ottawa getting beat by a fantastic pitching performance. And I mean, like you said, it has to be game of the year. I mean, you can't ask for anything more in a playoff game than that. So that sent us in motion to Game 3 on Sunday. Both Game 3 and Game 2 of the West Division Series would be played on this day as well. It was also a close game for a while. We'll finish up on the Quebec Series, of course. Scoreless through the first 3. Quebec breaks the tie to get 1 run. Nothing going in the 5th, but in the 6th is really where they kind of broke it open. They put up 3 runs, took a 4-0 lead. In the 8th, each side got a run, and that was just about all there was. So I guess you could say it was a lower stress game if you're a Quebec fan, but even still, a 5-1 victory is it's not always the most low stress game. Certainly available there. Carlos Santo with the win in that one, and hats off to Chris Bucia as well. Santo went 5 1/3, 3 hits, no runs, 6 walks, 4 strikeouts for Santo. But Chris Bucia, the guy who I kind of thought was going to get Game 2, but thinking about now, it does make sense that you would hold back the better of your 2 starters for a Game 3 if you need them, and also keep them ready for a possible championship game start as well. But Bucia went out 4 2/3. He gets tagged with a loss, 2 hits, 1 earned run, 1 walk, 4 strikeouts there. A solid outing here. Zach Westcott comes in relief for him. Only goes 2/3 of an inning. He surrendered 3 hits, 2 earned on 3 hits and 1 walk. Certainly there. And then Matt Valen came in as well. And then Escara also came in to pitch for them too. Bullpen outside of Westcott did pretty solid. And I think in the case of Zach Westcott, he threw a lot of innings over the course of about a week's time. So I think that just kind of caught up to him at a bad point. And meanwhile, on the flip side, Michael Austin came in to relieve Santo. He allowed no base runners, struck out 3 of the 5 outs he managed to get. David Richardson surrendered 2 hits and 1 run. And then Samuel Adams finished the job. He went 1 inning, struck out 2 in the 9th, and ended the day for the Titans and ended their season here. So certainly was a bit of a touch and go series in the beginning, and then Quebec kind of took over there. But a great series nonetheless.
Oh yeah, a series for the books for sure. And I hope this is not the last time that we see in the near future that we see these 2 teams battle it out in a playoff series. I think you hit it right on the head as far as Westcott, and I think I think he got to a point where he was just running out of gas a little bit, and I understand putting him in out of the bullpen. It's an elimination game and all hands on deck. Just kind of seemed like he was running out of gas a little bit at the end. Of course, it already started a playoff game earlier, but I think that you got to give credit certainly to Quebec for the offense, even though it was off to a bit of a slow start. They had that big 6th inning. And the pitching, I mean, the one thing you could say about Quebec that whole series, the pitching was really good, especially the back end of that bullpen was lights out. And that's why they're such a good team. That's why they're hard to beat. And I mean, now and they were able to put away the rival Titans for to advance to the Frontier League Championship Series.
Absolutely. And I mean, also hats off to the Ottawa Titans too. I mean, coming into this series, I thought it was going to be a steamroll situation. And I think part of that too is I watched a Boulder team that really just was out of gas go up against a Titan team that had more left in them. And so it really made it look lopsided. And I was just thinking, oh, well, this is a Titan team just taking advantage of a weaker Boulder team that just is out of gas. But they showed in this series that they are and were a very legitimate threat. And honestly, if they would have gotten to the finals instead of Quebec, I would have given them an equally as good shot against their Western Division opponent. And they really did prove an awful lot to me. There was a lot of guys, AJ Wright being one guy that really stepped up in this postseason. And I certainly am interested to see what kind of team they're going to return next year. I think Ottawa, if they could just be a little bit more consistent in the regular season, could very well win the East Division next year. I think they are a very, very good team, and they definitely changed my opinion of them over the course of this series. I have to give them that, and hats off to the Titans on that. It was a very fun series, a very well fought series too. So, a very enjoyable, very, very enjoyable series.
Yeah, for sure. I think, an Ottawa team that they haven't played, and they haven't played a full season. Of course, they kind of had to build the team from scratch going into the Frontier League. It was a really difficult situation for them coming in, and Bobby Brown did a great job, and nothing to hang their heads about at all. And going down to a really good Quebec team. So I mean, but Ottawa certainly, what a great season for them.
Absolutely. On the flip side, in the West, Game 2 took place, and I want to really say that it was a closer game than the score would have you believe, but it never really felt like, from what I was seeing on it, that this game was ever really truly in doubt. In the second inning, Schaumburg struck for 4. The Wild Things would not get on the board until the 6th. They put up a run in the 6th, put up a run in the 7th. They had a couple of threats in there, of course, but in the 9th, Schaumburg got both runs back plus another to go up 7-2. And then in the 9th, there was just nothing going for the Wild Things. So the final score is 7-2. Schaumburg sweeps Washington in that one. And this is a Schaumburg team that last week I said they're opportunists. They will take advantage of it. If you give them an opening, they will take full advantage of it and they will make you pay. And they proved that again in this series. But for just as much as they're opportunists, this is a team that has a lot of familiar faces from last year's championship team, supplemented with a lot of newer additions that they just kind of go right for you, and they know how to play postseason baseball. And if you're not careful, they are going to beat up on you. You have to approach them very carefully and kind of get a little bit of luck from some of their, hit or miss guys. And the ones that aren't hit or miss, you just got to do your best to contain them. And if you're able to do that, then, you're all well and good. But if the hit or miss guys are hitting, you're going to have a really rough night. And that kind of was proven in this series as the Boomers, they beat up on Washington for the second straight year in the postseason. And on the flip side, I mean, it's going to be tough being Washington again, getting so close to playing for a championship and trying to get that first championship. One of the teams that truly has been a model franchise, been very successful on the field, off the field, to still not have that championship, it does kind of burn you, and to be eliminated again by the same team as last year, that's got to hurt as well. But a lot of good performances on that Schaumburg side, and unfortunately for Washington, they just they had 2 bad innings, and that kind of cost them the whole game when you get down to it.
Yeah, I think Schaumburg, I mean, they are the poster child for getting hot at the right time. And that's not to say, because I think last year was a bit more of an example for that, per se, just because, I mean, to be honest with you, last year they won a bad division. They were pretty much an average team for most of the season.
You can even argue below average, to be honest.
Yeah, for sure. And I think this year they had a better regular season, but I mean, yeah, this team, it's got to sting certainly for Washington, but I mean, you got to give credit where credit's due, and Schaumburg getting hot at the right time, taking down a really good Washington team, and I mean, when you look at this game too specifically, I mean, Rob Whalen's a really good arm, and they were able to hit him pretty good for 5 innings, and Schaumburg, I mean, overall, the one thing you got to say about Schaumburg is, man, their offense come to play in this series, and shocked in something that we really haven't seen against Washington all year is their pitching staff honestly getting brutalized the way they did in this series, and just being able to go win a game on the road, especially in this game too as well. So I mean, congratulations to them. Their offense is getting red hot at the right time for sure, and which should sound familiar to a lot of Frontier League fans. Will they be able to finish it? Well, I guess we'll have to see about that, but setting up a big showdown with the Quebec Capitals. But I mean, same old story for the Schaumburg Boomers, because They just when it comes playoff time, you can never ever count them out, and they've proven that yet again.
It's honestly so impressive that they're able to do that. Not to mention that if you look at their bullpen, between Scott Shears and Thompson, they gave up 1 run in this game 2, and they allowed 2, 4, 6, 7 base runners in about 3 2/3 work. That's pretty impressive. I mean, hell, Daryl Thompson, not the Daryl Thompson, but Daryl Thompson, the reliever Daryl Thompson, in 2 innings of work, he struck out 5. He faced 10 batters. So half the guys that came up, he was striking out, and only 4 of them reached base here. So once you take out the 2 walks and the 2 hits, I mean, it was still an impressive performance with him, but even more impressive there. I mean, it's a strong bullpen, and also, Yoshikawa got to start again. So it tells me that light tower in game 1 of the postseason, that wild card game, almost helped out the Boomers a lot, right? Because Yoshikawa pitched pretty good to start. It's very limited amount of work before game 1 had to be suspended. And then he gets to come in, he gets to pitch a couple more times as well because his arm's still fresh. He basically made a bullpen start in that first game, and he's able to pitch in this decisive game, and quite clearly, he went 5 1/3, allowed 5 hits, 2 walks, and 1 run, struck out 6. He clearly was on. He clearly was a large reason why the Wild Things couldn't really get any offense going that day, and it allowed the bullpen, which kind of had to do some work in other games, to rest, and it's definitely very helpful for them. And it's going to be interesting to see, how the rest of the championship series plays out, as that's got underway this past Wednesday, the 14th, with game 1 being at Schaumburg, as well as game 2 at Schaumburg, as now we switch to a best of 5 for the Quebec and Schaumburg series to win the championship of the Frontier League. But very interesting series in a very interesting way that's all worked out.
Yeah, I think just the fact that Schaumburg continuing to do what they do in the postseason, and for Washington, second consecutive year, it's a tough one to swallow. Going out against the same team, you almost wonder what else can they really do. And I still think they're at a point where they're building their roster the right way. It's just baseball playoffs in any league is always a crapshoot, and they're just not able to get hot when it matters most. Congratulations to Schaumburg, and a tough way to go out for Washington, who had so many things go their way during the regular season once again, but it just wasn't enough again in the postseason.
Yeah, unfortunately for Washington there, but we do have a championship to look at, and we will get started on that right now. Game 1 in Illinois on Wednesday, the 14th of September. Game 1 went to Quebec, a 6-3 win for them. A couple of big innings to start. They got all their runs in innings 2, 3, and 4. 2 in inning 2, 3 in inning 3, and 1 in inning 4. The Boomers kind of answered back in the 6th and the 7th. They put up 2 in the 6th, 1 in the 7th. But in the end, while the hits were similar, the runs were not. A big win for Miguel Cienfuegos, who goes 6 innings, allows 7 hits and 2 earned runs. Only 3 walks for him, only 3 strikeouts as well. David Richardson's responsible for that other run on the board, but Frank Monticello does his job. Franklin Parra, just a few days after having a very clutch performance in Game 2, comes in and shuts the door, gets the save in 1 inning of work, allows 2 base runners, gets a strikeout. That's all she wrote. Flip side for the Boomers, Luis Perez was pitching. He allowed 10 hits, 6 runs, 1 walk, 6 strikeouts, and 6 innings of work. After Perez exited the game, though, only 3 walks and 2 hits by the bullpen there. So quite clearly against Schaumburg, showing that the bullpen is really the backbone of this team. If they can get a good start, they can shut you down. That's something we've known this whole postseason, and really most of the season this team was capable of doing. Bullpen guys, Pichardo, Shears, and Joyce for the Boomers there, all looking very strong in their outings as well. Overall, though, just not too much offense going for the Boomers, while the Capitals managed to get runs across early and then defend the lead. That's what good teams do, right?
Yeah, I think, honestly, Nick, I think that I view this Game 1 in this series as almost a must-win for Quebec. And
Yeah.
I say that because they had Miguel Cienfuegos on the mound. He was good, not great, but he was certainly good enough to shut down a red-hot offense. And I mean, of course, giving up just 2 earned runs over 6 innings. I kind of felt like this is a game that Quebec had to win, and they did. Because one, Cienfuegos on the mound, and for Schaumburg, they were kind of reeling on the pitching end. I mean, Luis Perez had a really rough regular season. I believe ERA over 6 during the regular season, and kind of a swing role. So I think that I think this was really a game that Quebec had to win, and they did. They took care of business. They jumped on Perez early, which is what they had to do, because you didn't want to get into the back end of that Boomers bullpen in a game that's tied, or you're tied or behind late. They didn't, and they jumped out ahead early. They kind of put this one to bed, even though Schaumburg kind of climbed back into it. Quebec did a good job kind of limiting the damage. I don't know if you'd agree, Nick, but I think I kind of view this game one as one that Quebec had to have, and they got it.
I wouldn't necessarily say game one was a must-have, but they did need to split in Schaumburg, and between the two of them, game one would have been a lot easier to win than game two. So I would say, I guess through doing some jumps on it, I would agree with it. They couldn't go back to Quebec down 2-0. That was just not going to be something that they would have been able to do. I don't see this team being able to take 3 in a row against the Boomers. So when you look at Cienfuegos versus Perez, or as we'll discuss in a second for game two, Cody Pavea versus Yoshikawa, it's clear which one's going to be a much easier win, and that is game one. And so they did take it. I would agree with that, and they managed to keep the Boomers at bay for that one. That wasn't quite the case in game 3, though, or game 2, though. Game 2 was close for a while. Schaumburg took a lead in the third, went up 1-0. Remained no more runs until the 7th, where Quebec tied it up in the top half of the 7th. Boomers got it back in the bottom half. We went into the 8th inning with a 3-1 score, so still a very close game until the bottom half of the 8th, where the Boomers exploded for 6 runs, nothing going for Quebec on either half of 8 or 9. It finishes being a 9-1 game, and quite frankly, there was just no real offense for the Capitals in game 2. Yoshikawa, as I just mentioned, pitched in this one, another 5 in the 3rd innings, 3 hits, 2 walks, 5 strikeouts, a solid performance any way you cut it. Thomas Nickel, he came in relief, inning and 2/3, allows 1 hit, an unearned run, and he strikes 2 out. Kristen Stott, Daryl Thompson, both pitch an inning. 1 walks 1 hit, 1 allows a hit, both got a strikeout, and neither allowed a run. So only 5 hits on the day for the Capital offense, only 3 walks on the day for the Capital offense, and no earned runs. They got 1 off an error. So that wasn't exactly great. But meanwhile, on the Quebec side, the starting pitching wasn't the issue. 6 1/3, 8 hits, 3 runs, 2 earned, no walks, 10 strikeouts. So a solid opening performance. It was Samuel Adams coming in, and his 2/3 of work in relief just wasn't good. 3 hits, 2 walks, 5 runs, all earned, strikes 2 out. Codina, he comes in, pitches a third of an inning, allows an earned run and a hit, gets an out, and then David Gauthier pitches 2/3 of an inning in relief, doesn't allow a hit, doesn't allow a run, doesn't allow a walk, doesn't strike anybody out, bunch of zeros in the stat line there. But at that point, the game was long dead. So it wasn't a bang up performance from the Quebec bullpen there. And this was one of those times where, as I said a moment ago, if Schaumburg gets a good start from their starting pitcher, they're a very tough team to beat, and that showed today, because that bullpen was not going to break at all, and that game 2 was on Thursday. Game 3 is later today, Saturday, and that is in Quebec now. So we are done with U.S. Frontier League baseball until 2023 now. But an interesting game 2, though.
Yeah, I think it really showed the distinct advantage that Schaumburg, as good as Quebec is, it showed the advantage that Schaumburg has in this series, undoubtedly, and that's their bullpen. And it also should be acknowledged that how hot the Schaumburg lineup is right now, and maybe they were kind of sleeping a little bit for the first part of this series, but they really woke up just in time. And yeah, the score probably makes it look a lot more lopsided than it actually was. But I mean, they were able to put it on this Quebec bullpen, and at the end of the day, this was one that. Obviously, this is a game that Schaumburg had to have. I feel that's pretty obvious when you're at home and you're already down 1-0. But I think that it shows really how Schaumburg's going to have to win this series. They're going to have to keep it close, turn the ball over to their bullpen, and let them work and let their offense try to go to work against a Quebec bullpen that's had its little bit of struggles. They're not a bad group, but certainly not one on the level of Schaumburg, and especially how they're pitching right now. So sets up a very interesting, a pivotal Game 3 in Quebec later tonight, of course, and it should be really fun for sure. I mean, these two teams, I think right now they're showing that they're the two best teams in the league right now, especially with the way that Schaumburg was able to dominate Washington in those two games, and it should be a lot of fun. And of course, a pivotal Game 3, but Quebec got the split that they needed, so I think they're in a pretty good position themselves also.
Exactly. Now we have a best of 3 series when you get down to it, and I imagine you'll see Sano go in Game 3 on the one side. On the flip side, I'm not quite sure what we're going to see out of Schaumburg. They have some options, certainly, but obviously Yoshikawa's your best pitcher here. He just went a couple days prior. I imagine if needed, he could probably go in a Game 5 situation for Quebec. In theory, you could pitch Cienfuegos on Sunday for Game 4, or you could just wind up holding him back in case you need him for Game 5. That's a decision that they could, always make, certainly. So I'll be interested to see what the pitching matchup winds up being in both Games 3 and 4, and if necessary, 5, of course. But it is a surprisingly even series, and this is a series between two franchises that you could say are pinnacles of winning. Schaumburg has a lot of historical success in the postseason. Flip side, Quebec, they were by far the most dominant team in the history of the Can-Am League. They won, 5 titles in a row, 6 titles in a row, went to 7 finals in a row in a league that existed for about 10 years. I mean, you can't really ask for much more than that as far as a franchise's success goes. So truly a historic team that is accustomed to winning too. It does feel like a battle of titans and two teams that win in their own way, but both rely on a lot of similar attributes. And as we've seen so far, it really comes down to the bullpens as to who wins. Game 1 and Game 2, the better pitching performance won the game on both sides.
That's so often what's going to come down to in these playoff series is the pitching on both ends. But really, just what is Schaumburg's offense going to stay hot now going on the road, the way it has for most of these playoffs. So I think that's really interesting. I think also on the Quebec end of things, obviously you won't see Cienfuegos on Saturday. Could you see him on 3 days rest on Sunday? Could you see him on normal rest Monday? I think it's an interesting strategy, and that's something that Pat Scalabrine is going to have to decide of when to pull that card. And of course, so much is going to depend on what happens in Game 3 later tonight. So it's going to be fun for sure. You mentioned a battle of the Titans, but there's 3 Titans I think you can say in the Frontier League. One of them has already been eliminated, and now there's 2 left.
Very clever on that, and I do agree with that.
Very clever joke.
Very clever. I appreciate that. I'm not the only one making these kinds of jokes. But I will say, I think Cienfuegos, the answer is, if Sunday becomes a must-win, then he's the guy you go with. I think you gotta throw your best pitcher out, even if it is on short rest. He gives you your best chance to win. You run him out there, and obviously, if it's an elimination game, it's all hands on deck anyway. You're playing for your life. If it winds up being they win today, they take game 3, then it becomes a lot simpler because you could just simply say, oh, okay, we have the luxury of resting him an extra day, getting him onto that regular rest. At that point, he will have been off the 15th, the 16th, the 17th, and then the 18th too. So he can pitch on Monday in that game, full rest. He'd be ready to go, business as usual. And obviously, you would like to see, no matter what, on Saturday and Sunday, get some mileage out of your starters as well. I think that is the one thing that I really don't like about that loss in game 2, is that it was your bullpen that lost it. Really, it was one bullpen pitcher that lost it. If you would have pushed your starter, they would have went, let's say, 7 innings, 8 innings, and that's kind of when they blew up. It's bad, no doubt about it, but at the same time, at least your bullpen didn't get burned through. And they do have the luxury of having the travel day before that, so they have off on the 16th, so a lot of the bullpen guys should be good. But if you could get some mileage out of a guy for the 17th or the 18th, either or, so that way, when we look here in a possible game 5, that all options are available, that really makes it a lot better. I would say, as far as bullpen fatigue goes, I'm a little bit more concerned about Schaumburg, who knows their bullpen's good, so they go to him a lot. Even if they're only throwing 2/3 of an inning and a third, it's not too much mileage, but it's consistent. So that is a little concerning to me. But overall, I do think this is a really hard-fought series, and it's going to be one that I feel like no matter what the end outcome is, we have a champion where you can look at and go, they earned this.
Yes, absolutely. I think there's between these two teams, I don't think there's any chance of kind of a fluke type of championship. Both these teams have really earned this spot, and we'll see when we talk next week. We'll see who ended up coming out on top, because it should be an exciting finish.
Absolutely. So I guess being that we have the luxury of being able to do this, who do you think is going to win, and how many games is it going to take to get that outcome?
I'm going to go Quebec in 5. I think they're going to win. I think they're going to win tonight. I think they're going to win game 3. I think Schaumburg can win game 4, kind of get their offense going. And then, I'm not betting against Cienfuegos in a game 5. So, I think they would have the advantage. Quebec, if it were to get to game 5, they have home field advantage. I think that I think Quebec's going to end up taking it home in a very close, but great finish, and take it home in 5 games.
Call it a cop-out, but I feel like I'm just going to pick whoever wins Game 3. I feel like the winner of Game 3, it may take 4, it may take 5, is going to wind up winning this series. That being said, and at the risk of not, having too much parity and diversity on the show, I am also going to agree I'm going to take Quebec in 5 as well. I think that Schaumburg's a dangerous enough team where they got at least one more win in them. But at the end of the day, Quebec seems like such a complete team that they're going to be hard pressed to lose. They seem like a team that, they've had, the knife put to their throat before in this postseason, and they've managed to fight back and win it. I mean, heck, look at game 2 that we discussed about 25 minutes ago. They were on the verge of elimination, and they managed to put together 5-6 innings of just fantastic baseball to keep their season alive, and then take it the following day in an equally as high stakes game. So, man, I have a hard time betting against a team like that. And while Schaumburg's had some adversity in this postseason, they rolled through Washington pretty easily. They beat up on Evansville fairly easily, even before the tower light delay. The first day of game 1, they looked to be a better team, and then the second day they proved they were the better team by just the way they dismantled an Otters team that was, quite frankly, a very solid and complete team. So I'm not counting them out. I think Schaumburg's got some fight in them, but at the same point, they really haven't faced too much adversity in the postseason yet. They've been down in a series once. They managed to tie it up. But now, if they're going back to Quebec, I like the Capitals to take it. I think they can win 2 out of 3 and win this championship again. So I'm going Quebec in 5. However, I do think whoever wins Game 3 has a very, very, very good chance of winning this series.
Yeah, and that's why that game 3 is so pivotal. So I'm sure we'll have some better answers after the game's played tonight, but we'll have to see.
Yep, definitely there. And if you have, I guess it's Flow Sports, you can watch Game 3 on there. And if not, there are a bunch of radio streams available. That's how I usually, I guess you could say watch, but more listen to the Frontier League games, because for the price they want for Flow streaming, I'm not going to pay that. So that said, there is some very good radio men across this league. Definitely check them out. Check out their broadcasts. And on that note,